Hey, what is up guys, and welcome back to our Junktown settlement build. Today we're going to be checking out the brothel inside of here, and I actually wanted to get this out quite a bit sooner, but believe it or not, I actually ended up scrapping pretty much the entire build, just because I thought it looked a bit too similar to the previous brothel we did in the Raider town. So I ended up redoing all of that, and it still looks like a brothel, but on the other hand, it should look at least a little bit different from what you may have seen before. Also, another thing I know I forgot to mention last time regarding our Soul Survivors Museum was that this is actually the same room that he stayed in while he was either building up this settlement or just helping it out. So that's the main reason there's a bed inside here. Otherwise, if you were just making a standalone museum, you definitely would want to leave something like that out. And I'd also recommend using a place like the Soul Survivors Sanctuary home to do something like that, just because you not only have more room, but there's also quite a bit more history behind that. Another thing for those of you noticing that the overall atmosphere might feel a bit different than some of our previous videos, I'm actually using a new EMB called the Pathos EMB, and it pretty much just makes the overall look and feel seem a bit more dark and gloomy. I'm still not sure if I'm going to keep it, but it definitely fits the overall style that I'm going for in terms of this settlement, so I may hang on to it for at least a little bit longer. But that being said, let's go ahead and check out the brothel. And on our way up here, you'll see there's a nice big sign that just reads "Live Nude Ghouls," and don't worry, they should be on their break right now, so we shouldn't have to witness that monstrosity. And seeing as how settlers or traders who come through here would most likely be visiting this building during the later hours of the day, I think it may be best that we go ahead and wait until then, just so we can get a better sense of the true atmosphere you're supposed to experience when visiting a place like this. Alright guys, so now that it's nice and dark, let's go ahead and make our way inside. And on our way up here, you'll see we have one more fancy sign. Luckily, this one isn't regarding the nice and wrinkly ghouls. And I will say the one thing I did try to keep the same as our last brothel was the overall color scheme. So as you can see, everything is sort of engulfed by this nice red hue. And really quick, before we start taking a close look at some of the smaller details in this build, I wanted to go over the name of this brothel, and that just so happens to be the Red Clover, which I think is very unique to this settlement in particular, just because every other building here seems to have some sort of relation to the Soul Survivor, whereas this one doesn't, and I think that's for the best considering this is a brothel. And for me at least, even after Nora died, I thought my character would still feel rather close to her, and I never really saw a brothel as being the type of place he would go to, so I tried to keep this building very separate from his legacy, I guess you could say. But hey, after all, Hancock is the owner of the settlement now, so I think we just had to have something like this. But anyways, moving on, I think you'll notice if you saw the other brothel video we did for our Raider settlement, the key difference here is that we don't have the separate rooms where you can really shut the door and have some privacy. In here, things are still kind of split off and separated, but like I said, you don't have your own individual rooms you can really go into and get the full experience. And you may remember I did mention earlier that I sort of ended up redoing the entire build, and that's because before we actually had separate rooms like that, but due to, I guess, our lack of space here, I personally thought that made the build feel way too small, because you had sort of the main hallway and then that was really all you could see when you came in here. So definitely not the look I was going for. But speaking of those separate areas we do have, I think this one is definitely my favorite just because it has quite a bit more of the small details, and in this case they are a bit more kinky, because obviously you have the handcuffs and the wooden paddle there. I'm sure you can all guess what those are used for. And once again, I've tried to continue the theme of this place being very red. So we have furniture in that color, the light in that color, and also the Nuka-Cola flag, which might have been something you didn't expect to see in a brothel, but I figured since it does have the red color and also, not to mention, the decent looking girl on there, it ended up being rather fitting. Apart from that, and on our way to the next sort of broken off room, we also have a few more tables and space to sit. So there's one here on the far left wall, and also one more over there next to the main doorway. And another thing I love about this build, lighting wise, is that even though we do have these very red ones, they're also complemented by the regular candle chandeliers as well. So we have the two on this wall, and there's also one more on the left. And not only do these look a bit more fancy, but they also do a nice job of breaking up that red and adding at least a little bit of yellow to the build, which to me makes it feel a bit more warm and homey, which is definitely something you want for a place like a brothel. In terms of some of the smaller details that I think are rather fitting for a place like a brothel, those items would include things like the more revealing magazines, and we have the one here, and I think a few more over in the separate room off to our right, so you can see those over on this table. There's also some things like the pink or purplish flowers, and those are scattered all over the build as well. And of course, another detail I just had to bring over from our previous brothel were the flamingos. Now that I think about it, they do unintentionally sort of look like they're mating at the moment, which once again I guess is fitting for a place like this, but trust me when I say I did not try and do that. But yeah, moving on to the other separate room, excluding the deck obviously, and we'll get to that in just a bit, but focusing on this, you'll notice we have the girl there, and there actually used to be two, although I think the other one we had here actually died in a recent raid that this settlement experienced, and I was never able to find her body, so that was kind of weird, but anyways, in terms of the other details in here, we also have a couple ghoul heads, the weird mannequin off to the right, which for some reason is kind of glitching out on us right now, but oh well, not really sure there's any fixing that. And last but not least, there's also all the stuff on the back table too, which we got a bit of a closer look at earlier. And finally, moving to the balcony, you'll see we have even more seating, and whenever you guys choose to download this settlement once it's finished, I think you could either turn this into a sort of VIP section for some of the more wealthy patrons, or it could just be a place where whoever's here comes out to just get a nice breath of fresh air, or somewhat fresh, considering there's radiation everywhere. All that being said, I think that should do it for today, so hopefully you did enjoy the build. In terms of the rest of the settlement, we only have a few more things to finish up, such as, well, I guess all we really have left are the various smaller trading areas, which I think I'll go ahead and get done in one video, just because each of them are rather small and I don't think they really warrant their own. So stay tuned for that. And also, for those of you interested in checking out some more settlement builds that may not necessarily be mine, I can definitely recommend another YouTuber by the name of Donald Strong. And I'll be sure to throw up a link somewhere on screen, and there should be one in the description as well. But basically, he's got a really nice eye for detail and just some cool settlements overall. And I think if you enjoy the amount of work I put into my settlements, you'll no doubt be blown away by some of the stuff he's able to come up with. But yeah, I figured I'd throw that out there, considering the lack of videos on this channel has been rather apparent lately, and that's really just due to the overall lack of games that have come out recently. though things should start picking up a bit more come the fall. Once again though, hopefully you guys did enjoy this build. Feel free to let me know what you thought down in the comments. And as always, I will see you in the next one.